A historic surge. Anti-Asian American hate incidents continue to skyrocket despite public awareness campaign. NDEA Yancey Bragg. USA Today. May 6, 2021. Violence against Asian Americans and Asians has grown despite increased national attention and political action against anti-Asian hate, experts said. There was a more than 164% increase in anti-Asian hate crime reports to police in the first quarter of 2021 in 16 major cities and jurisdictions compared with last year, according to a report from the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University, San Bernardino. More than 6,600 hate incidents have been reported in the year after the pandemic began in the United States. Stop Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, AAPI, hate announced this week. More than a third of those incidents were reported this March alone, according to the organization founded last year in response to increased targeting of AAPI during the pandemic. The new data comes after several high-profile attacks. A man was arrested Tuesday for allegedly stabbing two Asian women in an unprovoked attack in downtown San Francisco. Over the weekend, two Asian women were attacked in New York City by a woman who demanded they remove their masks, then struck one of them in the head with a hammer, according to police. The assaults are the latest in a series of brutal crimes against Asians and Asian Americans, including the fatal shootings in March of 8 people in Atlanta, that left 6 women of Asian descent dead. Stop Killing Us attacks on Asian Americans highlight rise in hate incidents amid COVID-19. It's not going to be likely to decrease anytime soon unless we are very vigilant about it, said Van Tran, an associate professor of sociology who studies the experience of Asian Americans at the Graduate Center at the City University of New York. We have yet to create and engender institutional change and behavioral change at the largest scale. Russell Zhang, co-founder of Stop AAPI Hate, said it's hard to tell from his data whether hate incidents are occurring at a higher rate or if the community is reporting more incidents because of increased awareness and media attention. I think the racism is pretty deeply felt and anger directed towards Asians is still pretty high, he said. Despite federal action, rise is accelerated and sustained. The uptick in anti-Asian violence was first reported in March 2020 as COVID-19 began spreading across the nation and some politicians, including President Donald Trump, blamed China for the pandemic. Since then, lawmakers have advanced legislation, police departments have created task forces and hotlines, and community members have organized demonstrations and neighborhood watch programs. Last month, the Senate passed legislation aimed at fighting hate crimes against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders with overwhelming bipartisan support. If the House passes the law, it would be a very strong first step, but more structural changes are needed to eradicate the racist attitudes underlying these crimes, Tran said. He noted there are already hate crime laws that need stronger enforcement. President Joe Biden signed an executive action condemning racism and intolerance against Asian Americans and has repeatedly expressed concern about the rise in violence. Biden's change in tone from the previous administration probably helped, but political rhetoric is not enough to quash the rise, according to Brian Levin, author of the XSEB report and a professor of criminal justice. Even with President Biden and Congress making admirable efforts, there's still a subculture that is vulnerable to either a shallow level of prejudice or a very deep level of prejudice, he said. Even people with low, shallow prejudices can act violently based on situational factors. Levin, who has tracked hate incidents for nearly 30 years, said the rise in anti-Asian hate crime reports may get worse as COVID-19 restrictions lift. We had a 146% increase in 2020, and that is now being accelerated and sustained, he said. This is a historic surge and it requires immediate action by civic leaders, educators, and policymakers and law enforcement, particularly in the area of outreach. Better data needed to combat massive underreporting. Although solving the issue requires a whole society approach, Levin said, the most urgent issues lie with law enforcement. Although part of the increase he's observed may be due to increased reporting, there is massive underreporting of hate incidents. Better data is needed to evaluate the scope of the problem. Fewer than half of the victims of a hate crime report it to the police, according to data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics. Levin said some places such as New York City, which created an Asian hate crimes task force, do a good job of counting these crimes. In other places, they fall through the cracks. He pointed to Alabama, which was the only state to report zero hate crimes in 2019. Hate crimes against Asian Americans are on the rise. Here's what activists, lawmakers, and police are doing to stop the violence. We really have to have concrete data collection, he said. If we're getting delays, the FBI data comes out in mid-November, that's not going to help the communities that are experiencing this now. The FBI collects national hate crime data, but data for 2020 and 2021 has not been released. In 2019, 216 anti-Asian hate crimes were reported, according to the latest data available. Levin suggested tying federal funding to data collection. He pointed to a bill in California that would create a permanent commission tasked with creating a yearly comprehensive accounting of hate crime activity statewide and offering recommendations as a possible model. He said police departments must do a better job of determining when a crime is a hate crime and suggested departments implement a two-tier review system that includes a community liaison or outside board. Culturally competent resources needed for victims. More needs to be done to educate the community about how to report hate incidents, particularly if they don't rise to the level of a crime, and to connect victims with support resources, said Evangeline Chan, a CO chair of AAPI Affinity Group at Safe Horizon, which provides support to crime victims. Chan, like many experts, said there may be cultural or language barriers that prevent Asians and Asian Americans from reporting incidents. She said in New York City, where her organization is based, many community members don't know they can report violations civilly to the NYC Commission on Human Rights or access mental and physical health resources even if they decide not to report. Stop Asian Hate. Asian American activists demand equal civil rights, better education in schools after Asian hate attacks. Hate in America. Millions are victims of hate crimes, though many never report them. What we would like to see is really a little bit more of education, outreach and awareness centered around the resources that already are available, Chan said. Hope you like it. Thank you.